My name is T. Nurnberg,
I'm Cooper Westhoff.
and today we're going to be talking about World War II.
Specifically, the European and Pacific fronts.
Okay. In World War II, there were two different theaters. There was the Europe Theater and the Pacific Theater. And involved in the Europe Theater was the Allied powers of Britain, France, the Soviet Union, Canada, and the United States. And they were facing off against the Axis powers of Germany and Italy.
And also Japan.
So the Europe Theater, we're going to talk about that one first. It's just wars in Europe.
It started when Germany attacked France through Belgium instead of attacking through the border of Germany and France, like the Allies had anticipated to happen. This was a smart idea by the Germans. One of the many smart ideas of Hitler.
We're going to go over the significant battles in the Europe Theater because that's the interesting stuff. So the first significant battle that kind of started World War II was Germany invaded Poland. And because this was one of the first battles, Poland was not prepared at all, so they got absolutely destroyed. They had 2,000 tanks coming in, 900 bombers, and 400 fighter planes. And Poland was just not ready for this amount of force. So they mobilized late, and they got absolutely destroyed, which this alerted other countries, because basically what all the other countries were doing was they were letting Germany do whatever they want, because they knew that if they resisted what he was doing, then it would start the war. But they knew that when this happened, they kind of had to intervene.
But it didn't alert America, though, because America didn't want to go to war, because the people said no. America didn't really come into the war until after Japan bombed us, which was not good.
Yeah, that got us into the Pacific Theater War, but we'll talk about the Pacific Theater later.
Sorry about that. The next important that I can think of is D-Day. D-Day was a big one.
Yeah, D-Day was probably one of the most gruesome battles in the whole entire war, because America, it was the British, America,
France,
and Canada, yeah. And of course, America got the two hardest beaches because we're the best country like that. But so we stormed Omaha, and there was different levels we had to go through. We had to get to the beach first, which if you know what a beach looks like, it's just sand and there's nothing on it. So they got absolutely a lot of people died because they just had machine gunners on them.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and then they had to get up the rock, the beach is rocky and stuff, so they had to get past that hard terrain, and that also made it difficult to get vehicles through. And
it was pretty kooky.
Yeah.
Not gonna lie. I'm surprised we won against the Germans since they had such a great opposition on us, but we're just built like that. We're just so strong that we took the beaches. The Germans weren't ready. I bet it made Hitler very scared when we took it.
Yeah, he was probably confident. He had all the machine guns set up to aiming at firing at the beach. But just a bunch of people, just a bunch of bodies, and they were able to get to the machine gunners to take them out, and then they advanced from there, and then they got inland.
After the Allied forces successfully won D-Day, we continued to push through France, and the Germans finally fully retreated, which was a big dub on us.
Yeah.
That's a big chunk of land that we got back. It really put Hitler in his place then. Another decision that Hitler made, which was pretty stupid, was deciding to attack the Soviet Union. It worked in the first part when he attacked them because, they're like, oh, you were allied with us, what the heck? And it got pretty far into the Soviet Union, but then winter hit, and the Soviets were used to the cold climates, so they kind of just completely destroyed the Germans. And Hitler kind of shot himself in the foot there.
Yeah, I also know that Germany lost a bunch of planes because of the cold. Because like engines would freeze and then the planes would just dive bomb and just like they'd have engine failure and the planes would just they would all just go down because they were not like really designed for cold weather of the Soviet Union. Because that was like their first enemy that had like a climate that harsh. Because they were just fighting people in Europe and stuff. So
It's a pretty different front.
so those were two wars from the Europe theater that were pretty significant. But how the Europe theater ended. So Germany, they kind of like, so they were already fighting on the Western Front, and then I don't know if they got confident or I don't know why they like split it into two fronts, but then they started fighting two fronts with the Eastern Front with Russia and the Western Front with France. So that like split up their armies and it weakened them a lot. And by that time, like Western allies were able to capitalize off of this and conquer most of Western Europe. And the Soviet Union was also conquering a lot of Eastern Europe. And then Germany kind of just collapsed because they just didn't have enough power to sustain two like battles with like all these powerful countries.
Which eventually Hitler got stressed out over fighting so much on two fronts and losing that he decided he gave up all hope and killed himself, which kind of was bad for Germany because then they had nobody telling them what to do, which basically they forfeited after Hitler killed himself. It was not good for them. Hitler kind of screwed over his own country after promising to save it or whatever.
Yeah, because like Hitler was like super well spoken, so he was like perfect leading, a psycho country like that.
He was a good leader. He just didn't have the right motives.
Oh yeah, he like took a bunch of country like land, and he had a pretty successful war until like a bunch of allied powers just teamed up and destroyed him. But I know he's kind of a little on the crazy side too. Like he was on a lot of drugs, I think, and he took like shots of testosterone too, which kind of made him psycho, and like that's why he would always yell like crazy during his speeches and stuff. So I think that kind of just fueled the psychoness of Germany. So now we're gonna move to the Pacific Theater, and the Pacific Theater was way different than the Europe Theater because there was like a huge lack of land. So you'd see a lot more naval battles and a lot more battles on little islands. They would do this thing called island hopping, where they would just hop between little like islands, and this made for some really gruesome battles because the enemies were like forced to intense face-to-face fighting. Like it's not like they had a bunch of land to retreat to or something. Like they had to fight, and if they didn't win, then they would die. So it was definitely very gruesome. It made for a lot of gruesome battles. So the Pacific Theater has like a lot of the most bloodiest battles of World War II. Probably a lot of the worst ones.
It was just the Americans island hopping too. The Japanese were already set up in the islands ready for an attack.
Yeah, that's a big disadvantage that America had because they were the ones on the offensive all the time. So they were going to these unknown territories, and Japan knew the land. They knew like they had stuff set up already. I mean, because it's one thing just like attacking people on like normal land when they're in the defensive position, but when you're hopping island to island, not knowing what to expect at all, and all you have is just a bunch of bodies to run into machine guns, it's definitely not as easy as like the Europe battles.
We're going to start off talking with Pearl Harbor, which is what brought America into both the Pacific and the European theaters. Pearl Harbor started when Japan thought it would be a smart idea to attack a naval base in Hawaii because they thought they could get rid of the American Navy by doing that, which they didn't do. They didn't do much of doing it. They kind of just pissed America off, basically.
Yeah, that's basically what brought America into the war.
And then the Battle of Midway happened after that, where Japan again thought they were being smart and would bomb an island, but America was ready with the Navy there. They fought right back and destroyed Japan.
Yeah, that was an example of like a huge like naval battle in the Pacific Theater. There was a lot of ships and planes over the ocean fighting. The U.S. Winning the Battle of Midway was a turning point in the war because Japan lost like a lot of their boats, which ships were like vital in the Pacific Theater because the Pacific Theater was like fought with mostly planes and ships. So if you're losing 4 major ships, which they lost 4 of their large carriers, which were really important to overtake American islands and fight America.
We're gonna jump from the first into one of the last, and we're gonna talk about Okinawa, or Iwo Jima, not Okinawa, that's the next one, but Iwo Jima, kind of like D-Day, but worse.
Yeah. It was fought between the U.S. Marines in the Imperial Army of Japan. It was it was also like a naval battle, but it was mostly planes, which it was one of the first like huge battles with planes, because like in World War I you didn't see many planes at all because they were kind of still being developed. But in World War II, you saw a lot more battles with planes, which made battles way more gruesome than before. Iwo Jima started on I think it was February, it was somewhere time in February. It is 1945, so it was towards the end of the war, and there was a lot of lost lives in that one. It was over 20,000 Japanese troops, and I don't remember the Marines, but there's a lot less Marines that died. The U.S. won this war after 5 grueling weeks of face-to-face combat, and the Americans taking over Iwo Jima was pretty important and would help America a lot because they used there was 3 airfields on Iwo Jima that America used as an emergency landing site, and a lot of U.S. airmen were saved by using Iwo Jima airfields as an emergency place to land.
The final battle of the Pacific Front was Okinawa, which is probably the bloodiest because it was Japan's last attempt to try and defend themselves from the Americans. So it was either they win or they all die, which it ended with them all dying because there was nowhere for them to go. After Okinawa, America dropped 2 nukes on Hiroshima and the other one. I can't remember the name of the other one.
That was kind of just the cherry on top for the U.S., just destroying Japan in the Pacific Theater. But I'm not saying it was a good thing that they did. I'm just saying
it was pretty unethical.
It was the cherry on top for beating them, not killing innocent civilians.
So next thing we're going to do, we're going to have a little quick questionnaire for each other. I'm going to start it off strong by asking Tate, if you could go back in time, would you kill baby Hitler?
So if I could go back in time, I think killing a little baby is kind of unethical, even if you know they're going to do bad things. But I think what I would do is I would maybe change a small portion of something that would affect his life, maybe burn down the art school that protected him or something. Because if I change one thing, then it probably won't happen. So that's probably what I would do, honestly. So what would you do all day as a Jew in a concentration camp? That's my question.
I think if I was a Jew, I'd try and be the cook so I could eat, because they were pretty skinny. They didn't really have much to eat.
So you just illegally eat the food? What if you got caught though?
It'd be better dead than concentration camp.
I guess honestly, I'd rather just be dead than living in a concentration camp because it's probably gonna get gassed anyway.
Would you rather have to go through D-Day or Iwo Jima?
I have to say probably D-Day, honestly, because I feel like majority of the people in both these battles died on the U.S. side, for sure. So my chances of surviving would be very low. So I feel like I would get a really quick death in D-Day. So I jump out, and then I just get shot by a machine gun right away. So I'd be like, because I'm not trying to like go through all that and then come home with a bunch of trauma and the rest of my life is gone. So if you had to be in the war, what position would you want to have in the military?
I'd want to drive the boat. I don't think the people driving the boats would actually get into battle. I think they just went from point A to point B and hope not to get sunk.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of like ships lost in the naval battles for the U.S., but like I guess you could do that.
But I mean, like, the whole thing about captain has to go down with the ship. I could just say I went down. I can swim away.
Yeah, you could. Well, what if you're in the middle of the ocean though? You just die.
Yeah.
No, honestly, like, if I was like a part of the military during that time, I had to be. I'd probably like. I wanna be in like a tank. I wanna be a tank machine gunner. Not because of like I have a higher rate of survivability, but that would just be like kind of cool to be a machine gunner in a tank or something like that, or maybe someone who like shoots the tanks. I think I'd feel pretty cool if I did that. A lot of power.
Yeah.
But I'd probably like get blown up by a huge explosion eventually, or a mine or something. Alright, so how do you think World War II could have been prevented?
When Hitler started, or Germany, not just Hitler, Germany under Hitler's control, when they started like expanding, starting to take stuff, I would have probably been like, hey, I would have dropped the nuclear bombs on them instead of Japan, to be honest. Been like, you do any more of this and we'll kill you.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if all the other countries knew the amount of destruction that was about to happen, then like maybe that's a good choice. But I feel like they didn't really know how much stuff like was about to happen. So if they actually knew like what was the future held, then they would like nuke them.
Yeah, I bet they're pretty. I bet that's probably why they attack them, because the Treaty of Versailles or whatever.
Yeah, they also didn't know like the potential that the Germany army had, because they actually weren't like that powerful as in numbers, but like strategically they were on point, and I don't think everyone else was prepared for that, for the Blitz.
Creek.
Yeah. Alright, so that's the end of this podcast. This is our first and last episode of this podcast, because we just don't really see a future with this podcast, honestly. So,
Hope you enjoy.
yeah.